Hi everyone, Lazy Fire here. Welcome back to the Hate the Player podcast, where I only have one other person with me ever. But today we have Three Toes here.
Yay!
He hasn't been around in a while, but I would like to remind everybody you got a compliment on the theme music recently.
Yeah, I actually like the one time I actually click on click on the postings of this podcast, and I see someone enjoys the theme song.
Yeah, Gangster Gandalf.
Oh yeah,
He likes the theme song. He he hates himself because he watches everything I do. Apparently, but,
well, I mean, few people realize that the G in G-Funk actually stands for Gandalf.
yeah, Gandalf funk.
There you go.
It started out with like a mandolin-looking thing and like a lute, and it just kind of went from there.
You know, somebody somewhere has like folkcore hip hop with lutes and mandolins.
Yes, there has got to be that thing. It's like an Amish thing or something. It's like all these wooden instruments that someone's just distorted. Oh God. So Three Toes, you haven't been around for a while. You've been busy.
Yeah.
You've been running around. Clemson's number one in the BCS or something. I don't know.
Yes. Oh my God. Well, okay. Well, the BCS is no more. We're number one in the college football playoff system.
Oh, whatever.
Yeah. So, right in front of Roll Tide, Alabama. Might I add.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, we play Oklahoma in the Orange Bowl in the first playoff,
Yep.
and Alabama plays Michigan State. So, you know, if we get through that, and everyone fully expects Alabama to beat Michigan State, so you know, if we manage to beat Oklahoma again, we beat the shit out of them last year in like the Citrus Bowl or something, whatever it was. But if we can beat them again, we'll probably play Alabama in the national championship.
Oh man, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Fuck Alabama up.
Yeah. I don't know. I think it'd be a good game. I don't know if we would fuck them up. Their defense this year is insane.
Yeah.
But yeah, aside from that, I had jury duty for a fucking murder trial.
Yes, you did. That was a story. I was actually, when you said you had jury duty, I thought it was like, well, this one guy crashed into this other guy, and they're saying it's not his fault, and not straight murder.
No, yeah, this was a fucking full-out criminal case, which this is only the second time I've ever been called for jury duty, but the first time I've ever actually been sat on a jury.
You hit it out of the park, your first shot.
Yeah, I mean, it was crazy.
Yeah.
Do you want to hear about it?
I want to make this podcast about the entire thing, please.
All right, well, so strap in, I'll tell you that, because this wasn't just a clear-cut open and shut, oh, smoking gun, he's guilty case.
Oh, really?
This is a fucking CSI episode. I'm not even joking. We were in court 7 days. Veterans Day kind of screwed it up because the courthouse was closed, like in the middle of the week, so that kind of pushed us into, you know, extra time. But yeah, I reported on a Monday. Went through jury selection on the Monday. Trial began Tuesday. We broke on Wednesday, and then finished up the following Tuesday.
Yeah,
and it was a pain in the ass. Didn't get
doing
paid.
Your civic duty has to be.
God, dude, we didn't get paid shit. Apparently, if you sit on a federal jury, they'll match your wage at least to a certain level.
Wow. Yeah, I remember that being a thing.
We got $10 a day and 57 cents a mile.
How the fuck are you supposed to actually, like, you can't expect people to just, like, live off that. Let's be honest here.
Well, I mean, no one's, quote, living off of it because
I know, but
typically trials don't last more than a week. We got a little screwed because of Veterans Day, like I said.
Yeah.
But
I mean, just, like, in general, there are people out there who, if you told them, listen, you have to come into this thing for a week, and you're going to get paid $10 a day plus 57 cents a mile, you have to travel, they'd be, what the fuck are they gonna do? Like,
oh, everyone was pissed. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
Everyone was completely pissed about it. Like, I'm lucky that, you know, I've got so much leeway with my job as terms of like where I work, like working from home, like just doing work at night when I get back. A lot of these people, a lot of the other jurors had like hourly wage jobs to where they were screwed.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, they couldn't. They can't be fired for serving on jury duty.
Yeah.
And I think in our state, the employer is only required to pay them for 2 days of service.
Oof.
But yeah, the rest of the time they just be like, nope, sorry, you didn't come in, so of course you're not getting paid. Have fun with your $10 a day.
Jesus Christ.
But anyway, so let's
get back to the
strap
murder
in.
at hand.
3 key characters I'll say to keep in mind.
Okay.
You've got Hayward, the defendant, accused of murder and possession of a firearm and commission of a violent crime, which, at least in our state, it really only gets tacked on because it carries a pretty high minimum sentence.
Okay.
Because, like, murder, really, I mean, that's up to the judge how much they want to give somebody, at least on, like, the state level. If it's, like, a federal, capital murder case, I'm sure there's, like, a minimum sentence. So 2 charges on Hayward. Then there's Miles. He's the victim, deceased. And the key witness, this lady, last name Carson. So, and they didn't give us any of this in order.
Okay.
So we had to, like, piece it all together. But I'm going to tell it, like, in order, and hopefully I don't, like, forget anything key.
Okay.
So, it started out that morning. Hayward texts one of his girlfriends.
One of his girlfriends?
He's got a couple of women in his life. I'm just using the term girlfriend, but he was sleeping with this girl, and she wanted a relationship, but he didn't, blah, blah, blah. They didn't really get into that because it wasn't really relevant.
So is Hayward, like, a fat redneck, or is he, like, what is he?
No, he's a 25-year-old black guy.
Okay. I was going to say, these are redneck and last name Carson and, like, Miles, or just, like, these are good old boys in my mind. So I just
no, this is Valentino Hayward, DeAndre Miles, and LaToya Carson.
Okay.
Hayward lives in a pretty rough area, in not in downtown Charleston on the peninsula, but in an area incorporated by Charleston. Pretty rough area called Ardmore.
Okay.
He texts his girlfriend, and they had been texting back and forth all morning, but this is the only, like, relevant part. He texts her and says, I'm about to talk to somebody about robbing someone because I'm 180 short. Never says, like, what he's short for. I assume maybe he had, like, an outstanding debt to someone and they were coming to collect or some shit was going to happen.
Yeah.
So she texts back. She's like, did you mean to send that to me? And he's like, yeah, you're always trying to keep tabs on me. I'm just letting you know what's going on. So she's like, okay, well, I'm not going to try and tell you what to do, but be careful. And if I come across any money, like, you can have it. Like, try and keep them from having to do this.
Yeah.
So the way the prosecution then started to frame it, they're like, now if you're out to rob someone and you have a specific amount in mind, you're not going to go after someone you know very well because they're going to be able to identify you real easily. Like, why would you rob a good friend? You're not going to go after a complete stranger because, hardly anyone carries cash anymore. Like, if you have a specific amount you need, you're not just going to pick a random target because you don't know what they have.
Right.
So, Hayward knows Miles, the victim, but not, like, super well. Apparently they were together in, like, a group home growing up at one point in the state. They live in completely different areas, and phone records showed... Okay, so this took place in December of 2013. They had no previous contact since August of that year. Wow. So it's not like they talked that often, and they weren't even, like, saved as contacts in each other's phones.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
Like, they showed that he had to manually type in this guy's number to contact him. So he contacts Miles, who, and they even said, we're not trying to paint this guy as an angel. He had been known to be a drug dealer in the past. Right. Nothing recent. People even had reports that he was, trying to change his life around, what have you.
Yeah.
Contacts Miles, don't know the substance of the phone calls, but shows that he contacted him via phone and text that day. And set up a deal or something to get Miles to come out to Hayward's location. Miles lived in the city of North Charleston, not just the north of Charleston. There's actually a separate city called North Charleston. It's fucking stupid, but in pretty ghetto. But it's about a half hour away from where Hayward is.
Right.
So that evening, Miles contacts Carson, who's a friend. She's a friend of his. She testified that they weren't romantic or anything like that, and they were just friends. Contacts her and says, "Hey, I'm getting ready to ride over to West Ashley. Do you want to come with me?" So she's like, "Sure." Nothing else to do, and said they did that a lot. They would go for rides together and just kind of hang out and chill. So she rides with him over to West Ashley for this meeting that he had with this person. She never really said what he told her was going on, just that he had to go over to West Ashley for something.
Okay.
This neighborhood, Ardmore. Says she's playing on her phone the whole time, on this some like chat website with her earphones in, isn't really paying too much attention, but says that they get lost. And he's calling Hayward constantly, like they're on and off the phone, getting directions on how to get there. She says finally they get so lost that they stay on the phone together, and he gives him turn-by-turn instructions on how to get there. So it's about a 10 to 12 minute phone call.
So she has a phone with her, and GPS is just not working.
Yeah, I guess not. I don't know. But
right, I'm sorry,
looking at the phones that they actually used,
yeah,
none of them really seem to be smartphones. I actually think one of them was a flip phone.
Oh, maybe that is. Because when you said chat app or something like that.
Well, yeah, okay. So yeah, I think her phone was actually like a smartphone, but Miles and Hayward's I don't think were.
Okay, so that makes more sense now.
Yeah. So and sure enough, the phone record showed that the last phone call Miles made was like 11 minutes and 57 seconds long.
Okay.
So she had the time almost down to a T. So they pull into this area, which the neighborhood calls the Hole. Sounds inviting.
Yes.
It's a dead end street, very poorly lit. There's like a apartment, not even really an apartment complex. It's almost like a motel, to where it's just a ground level open horseshoe apartment complex, and like 2 vacant houses. So she says they pull up. It's dark. It's like 8:30 at night. So and Miles is like, "Okay, I'm here. Where are you?" "Oh, I see you," and goes to get out of the car. She said at the same time she was still looking down at her phone, but said that she could feel like someone was looking in from the passenger window, like had their hand on the hood, like stooped down looking in. But said when she looked up, whoever it was had turned away, and they were, he and Miles were walking off. So she never got a look at his face, only saw him from the back. Short dreads, dark clothes, slim build, blah, blah, blah. So they go walking off. She's still playing on her phone, and says she hears 2 loud pops, like just a few minutes later. And she testified, and someone who actually lives in that apartment complex testified, that as sad as it is, they hear that all the time where they live. It's just not something you really think about. You hear gunshots. That's the sad reality of it. Then she said a few minutes after that, she started, kind of putting 2 and 2 together, got really nervous and anxious, like, oh my God, my friend's out there, and, I just heard gunshots. So she starts to call Miles. Doesn't get an answer. Then says that she thinks she can hear his phone, like hear his ringtone, while she's calling. So she gets out of the car and sees him lying on the ground with his phone in his hand. So she runs up to him, kind of not really picks him up, but like tries to like see if he's okay. Doesn't get a response from him. So she starts screaming and banging on doors in the apartment complex. And the neighbor that testified, who lives in that apartment complex, he and his mother opened the door and called 911. They called 911 on their landline phone.
Oh.
So, and we had to listen to the 911 call, and she is, just frantic through the whole thing, screaming, crying, what have you. So, police come out. Well, EMS comes out first. Police come out, get her statement, take in the car for processing after she said, she felt like somebody put their hand on the roof of the car, so they start processing that for prints. They don't find any shell casings. Let's see, what else?
Was his wallet on him?
Yes, he still had his wallet on him. Still had about $30, I think, in his wallet, along with 2 bags of a white powder. But his talk screen actually showed nothing but caffeine in his system.
Yeah.
So even if he was selling, he wasn't using or anything. So she and she gives a statement about, the other person she saw and, the description she could give. And then, they look at Miles's phone in his hand and see, the last person he was talking to. So I think they run the number and get Hayward's name, and also an officer who patrols that neighborhood frequently said that he stopped Hayward about 30 minutes prior because he saw him running through the neighborhood in street clothes. And I should say, Hayward lives not even 50 yards from where the shooting took place.
Yeah. Well,
he's right around the corner from where this guy got shot.
Yeah.
So said he stopped him, and number one, it looked suspicious, and number two, he wanted to make sure that he was okay, that he wasn't being chased, hauling ass in street clothes. So he said that he was okay, and he was just going to a friend's house. He patted him down, didn't find anything. Whatever. So they immediately have him as at least a person of interest. So they start tracking him down. They find him at the girl he texted that morning, his girlfriend, or whatnot. They pick him up at her house downtown the next morning. There's actually a city camera, police camera, street camera, right near her apartment. So they just turned that thing to her door and watched it until he came out. So they got him that morning. He's wearing a white t-shirt and jeans and whatnot. So they pulled him over, take them both in. They find his cell phone in the center console of her car, but the battery's taken out, case off, battery out. But all of it's just sitting there in the center console. It's that doesn't look suspicious at all. So they get his statement as to where he was that evening and what he was doing, and nothing's really syncing up. Really, he's kind of he's not really changing it, but he's not being super specific with the times he's giving. And the officers asked him, he's well, I didn't wake up till 4 o'clock that day because I had a late night the night before. And then in another statement he said he was at work all day, and he's I got up at 4. Then I went to a friend's house. He's no, what time did you go to a friend's house? Oh, about 7. Well, what did you do between 4 and 7? This is just not giving a really, really clear statement. Where to go to? So they process the car, the handprints on the car. They find 5 prints on the outside of the car. The owner's, Miles, 2 of them were his. 1 was his roommate's. 1 was Hayward's, right where Carson said it would be, on the roof of the car, a handprint right there.
Yeah.
And 1 was indistinguishable. It was so smeared or whatnot, so degraded that it'd be impossible to ID it.
And it might have been Carson's to begin with.
Right. So the expert from SLED, which is it's South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, it's our state level FBI. The expert on prints said that in the outside, in the elements, fingerprints and handprints don't last long. So first of all, it's impossible to date a handprint or a fingerprint. You can't tell how long it's been there. It's just water and oil that's left from your fingers when you touch something. So on a car that's being driven, it's not going to last long. Because, the defense was trying to say, oh, well, we don't know at what point Hayward could have touched that car. There's no saying if it was that night. Well, first of all, they just showed that there hadn't had any previous contact since August. Right. And number 2, it was a new car. It was less than a month old. He still had his temporary tags.
So there was no way this was just carrying over.
No, there's no way he touched that car before that night. Or at least that day. So that was the other thing that people, at least the other jurors, brought up, that Carson's prints were nowhere on the car.
Mm-hmm.
So they didn't really talk about the inside of the car. They mainly just processed the outside, I think.
Yeah.
So, either it was December, she could have been wearing gloves, or had her sleeve over her hand, or he opened the door for her, or that indistinguishable one could have been hers, whatever.
Yeah.
So, I might as well get this one twist out of the way. Carson is currently charged with the murder of one of Miles's friends.
That happened, obviously, after this incident?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
She showed up in county stripes wearing chains. So she, testified in, her jail outfit, chained up with her lawyer behind her.
Huh. Wonderful.
So, yeah. So this entire time, the defense is trying to misdirect us and say, oh, well, she's charged with murder of this other person. How do we know this wasn't some big, setup to where, she had some beef with him and his friend, was, trying to kill both of them. Which, of course, is a little ridiculous. They never showed that, Miles and this other person were really friends anyway, and that's a completely different case. We didn't really get into it, blah, blah, blah. But they couldn't prove any kind of motive.
Yeah. They're trying to pull in something from a different case to try to misdirect you. Exactly.
The only thing that the defense's ace in the hole ended up biting him in the ass bad. I gotta say, this defense attorney was shitty. He was awful. He wasn't a public defender. He was a private attorney.
Really? Why did he take the case?
Well, so I've got a bunch of friends that are lawyers, and they said this guy has a reputation of taking fucking any case and just being dirt cheap and really, really bad at what he does, but he will take any case.
He's basically a mesothelioma lawyer that just gets a murder case every now and again.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure he does plenty of ambulance chasing shit, but he's not quite as bad as the daytime lawyer or the daytime TV lawyers that show up.
Yeah.
But you got the feeling that this might have been his first murder case because he just wasn't really that organized. It seems like he didn't know what questions he was going to ask until it was time to ask them.
Yeah, it sounds like Lionel Hutz. You're basically describing.
Mr. Hutz, are you aware you're not wearing pants?
So yeah, oh man, I ran over his dog once.
Your Honor, I'd like to call for a bad trial thingy. It wasn't quite that bad.
Yeah.
But anyway, his ace in the hole was that Carson had gunshot residue on her hand. So they bring up another sled expert on ballistics and gunshot residue. And she stated that, yes, she did have gunshot residue on her right hand. None on her left, none on her clothing. Mm-hmm. That when you're around a gun that's fired, the residue goes everywhere. Everything gets covered in it.
Right, but it was only on her right hand, so probably from touching Miles.
Exactly. It's even more conducive to that than you think. So she said that Carson had one particle of gunshot residue on her right hand. Said that if you took a human hair and went across the diameter of the hair, you could fit 100 gunshot residue particles.
Wow, so they had nothing. It was
she had one. Exactly, she had one particle, and sure enough, the expert was like, "Yeah, that's typical of someone touching someone who has been shot." Mm-hmm. So, and where he actually got shot, he got shot in the shoulder blade, his right shoulder, in the back. It went across his neck and severed his spinal cord.
Wow.
Lead cast bullet, so it was unjacketed, which led it to be incredibly deformed. So even if they could, they couldn't run ballistics on it at all. It was so deformed. It would be impossible to match up with any kind of gun. So they didn't know the exact caliber. They knew it was nominal 38, which could be 9mm 38, 357 Magnum, 380 auto. They knew it was 140 grain, which, just through my own personal knowledge, it had to be likely 38 or 357, just because you don't get lead cast bullets in 9mm.
So you think snub nose pistol or something?
Well, it's even harder to get lead cast in anything. Like, people just don't shoot it because it's really dirty. It doesn't feed well into semi-automatics, which led to the other thing. They're like, yeah, since no shell casings were found and it was dark and a semi-automatic pistol can throw casings yards away, you're not going to comb through the grass in the dark and pick up the shell casings and take them, so it was likely a revolver. Mm-hmm. Sure enough, in Hayward's phone, he had 2 pictures of a .38 Smith & Wesson revolver from a month prior, deleted out of his phone. So, yeah, if you think you've deleted something in your phone, you haven't. Yeah. Like, they can pull anything off of your phone. You better destroy it.
Tom Brady
completely. Yeah, you better incinerate it to ash. Sorry, I had to take a drink of whiskey.
No, it's fine. This is fascinating because I love this sort of thing.
Discussing law and drinking whiskey.
Yeah, that's really the way to go. I should. Oh, my whiskey cup's not here. My wife took it. Anyways.
So yeah. I should note that they never found a gun. No gun was ever found. Which even if they had a gun, again, they couldn't run ballistics on it.
Yeah, I've actually heard with a lot of the murder cases, it's difficult to prove anything unless you can hold the physical gun in the room and say, this is the gun that killed the guy, this person is known to have it. Like, right. So you guys, obviously, you said it was more CSI than not, so right. I assume it became a whole thing on that.
Well, not quite. The gun came up, but what had happened was, this other girl who lives in the apartment complex, who was friends with Hayward, she was also arrested as accessory after the fact. So she testified saying that around 8:15 or so, or it might have been closer to 8, Hayward called her phone, like hammering her phone, because it was like 2 or 3 missed calls. Just called her,
uh-huh.
and said, "Hey, come to the door. Like, I'm at your apartment." So she goes to the door, and Hayward is there with his friend, guy named Wallace, and Wallace's 2 kids. It was like, "Hey, we need you to watch his kids. We're getting ready to go out." So she's like, "Okay, that's fine." Like, she was home with her 2 sisters, so they take these 2 little girls.
Is it a normal thing for them, or was that just like out of the blue?
She said it wasn't that, she didn't really know Wallace. She knew him, but didn't know him that well. But, like, it's just, I think culturally, that's just something, like, in the neighborhood, people just will watch each other's kids.
Sure.
So she says 15 minutes later, he calls her back and was like, "Hey, come to my house." And again, he's like 50, 75 yards away, his house. Mm-hmm. So she's like, I thought I was going to watch these kids tonight. He's like, "Just come to my house." So she goes to his house, says that he gives her a gun and says, hide this in your apartment. Says that she can't remember if he wrapped it up in a shirt or if she wrapped it up. She was, it gets foggy because she was scared, blah, blah, blah. Takes the gun back to her house, hides it. Says another 15 minutes later, calls her again and says, "Hey, come pick me up in your car and bring the gun." So she goes, picks him up, brings the gun. She says they drive to an area close by and give it to an unknown female. That never comes up again. Then has her drive him to his aunt's place up in North Charleston. Then has her drive him to the girl's place downtown. And that's how he got downtown that night. He doesn't have a car.
Yeah. So
that's how he got downtown that night. Right.
Yeah.
So I think her charges are still pending. I think her testimony was kind of in exchange for maybe some leeway from the state in terms of, like, hiding a gun for someone.
Yeah.
So Hayward gets arrested, um, put in jail, held without bond for this murder, because they've got him, basically giving his stories aren't adding up. He can't really produce a solid alibi. You've got the Sova girl saying that she hid a gun for him,
Hmm.
all this stuff. And Wallace also takes the stand. That's like his one alibi. But again, his story is making even less sense in terms of consistency of where they were, where they're going, all that sort of thing. Like, so, oh, we stayed at my place the whole night, and he lives, maybe a tenth of a mile away. It's like, oh no, we were at his place. Oh no, we were up in this apartment complex like a quarter of a mile away. Blah
Yeah.
blah blah. So it's nothing's really jiving in terms of where Hayward was that night.
Right.
But we know that he was the last person to contact Miles on the phone.
Hmm.
So another key piece of evidence is we have Hayward's phone calls from jail. And they're told that whenever you make a phone call, it's recorded.
Yeah.
Like as it should be. It's a fucking jail.
Yeah, and
So
yeah, it's a whole thing.
yeah, and each prisoner gets a pin that they have to type in to make calls. It keeps track of their call records. That's so it knows who you tie calls to, the time, because they only get a certain amount of time for calls. It keeps track of it, all that stuff. They have him making calls not only from his pin but from another inmate's pin, clearly being identified as Hayward. Like people saying, "Hey, oh, hey, Tino," or or saying, "Hey, it's me, Tino." So clearly identifying himself on this other person's pin. So remember, I said that Carson said she saw someone in a dark shirt, but in the morning he was arrested in a white shirt.
Right.
Well, on one of the phone calls, he's talking to someone, we don't know who. The state knows who, but it wasn't really relevant to the case, so they didn't publish a name or anything.
Hmm.
Saying, "Hey, is that shirt still in the yard?" And they're like, "Yeah." He says, "We'll burn that shit." Then they somebody asks him, it's like, "Hey, what about Elle? Is she going to be a problem?" So there's this other girl in the neighborhood named Liz who gave a statement to police. She actually gave two statements. So he's like, "I don't know. We need to hear the tape and see what she says." And the other person's like, "Well, should we just go ahead and take care of it and keep her quiet?" And he's like, "Well, yeah, green light. Go ahead. Let's not even worry about it. Just, keep her quiet. Just whatever you do, just make sure she doesn't say anything." And so you've got all this damning evidence of this guy, like, number one, telling someone to burn a shirt, you know, keep someone quiet. And they also, like, explained it was like, "Oh, yeah, well, back when we had to, keep so-and-so quiet, we had to cut someone ear to ear."
Oof.
Like, talking about, like, slicing people. All, the two pictures of the gun deleted off of his phone. All of his contact with Miles deleted off of his phone.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the only stuff deleted off of his phone. Erasing his call logs with Miles and his texts. All that stuff pulled.
Yeah.
So, as the prosecutor put it, those aren't the actions of an innocent person.
No.
Like, he's going back trying to cover his tracks. He doesn't have an alibi. We know that he at least set out to rob someone. Like, it could have gone wrong, and he ended up shooting him.
Yeah. It seems like a lot of the cases where somebody who is not framed, but rather is the wrong person, it's often that they have an explanation for a lot of things,
Right.
or they can at least provide some sort of idea of why they did a certain thing.
Right.
Like, I deleted these photos off my phone because I didn't need them anymore, or something like that. Like, I deleted 50 other things.
Yeah.
Or, like, I got rid of these numbers because I don't talk to these people. But instead, he's deleting very specific things.
Right, and only those things.
And it's that, yeah, I can completely see where the prosecutor's coming from on that.
So, So, like I said, he's charged with murder and possession of a firearm and commission of a violent crime.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in the final instructions that the judge had to us, she said in South Carolina and in a lot of states, the hand of one is the hand of all. Like, you do not have to pull the trigger to be guilty of murder. If you have knowledge, like if I told you and you had, reason to believe me that I was getting ready to go kill someone, here's when and where I'm going to do it, and you do nothing to try and stop me, you're just as culpable as I am.
Right.
So, the way I put it to everyone in Deliberation was, had Hayward not contacted Miles and led him to that location, would Miles still be alive? And everybody's like, well, yeah, he would. So he at least facilitated this murder.
Right.
Like, at no point did they even ever try to say, other than Carson trying to, pin her as some criminal mastermind, he never said, oh, well, yeah, we were doing this deal, and then someone came up and tried to rob us both. I got away. He got shot.
Yeah.
Like, I hate to think that I can come up with a better story for getting off with murder, but that'd be pretty simple.
Yeah.
That's a pretty obvious story to me.
It seems like, getting caught by the cop immediately afterwards is,
Well, no, that was earlier in the night.
Oh, it was earlier in the night.
When he stopped him running through the neighborhood?
Okay, yeah, sorry, when you said he was running through, I figured,
No, that was prior to the shooting, that he might have been trying to get to where he needed to be to commit the robbery.
Right, so he was probably going to pick up his gun again. Or something.
Maybe. Yeah, we're not really sure what it could have been. So, we found him guilty of murder, but not guilty of possession of a firearm and commission of a violent act, because we could never put the gun in his hand.
Right.
So it was kind of weird. Like, we even got like kind of the prosecutor, his head kind of like tilted as the judge read that verdict.
Right.
But then he kind of like shrugged his shoulders, like, well, yeah, I can understand that, I guess.
Yeah, maybe he was trying to go for he was trying to get that heavy sentence placed on him for the gun.
Yeah. And I mean, he got 38 years.
That's still a lot of time.
It is. He's 25. I'm trying to make sure I didn't forget anything. It was fucking crazy, man. And all the defense witnesses, like, all he had was like character witnesses.
Really?
He had like the manager of where he worked. And basically all she did was confirm that he worked there. They asked her like 3 questions. They asked, like, did he work there? Was he a good worker? And would he have been working that day? And she's like, well, that was, 2 years ago. I don't remember if he was working. And they're like, well, if it was a normal day, well, she's like, yeah, he should have been at work. So, like, even that wasn't great. They had, like, his dad, who, like, works there as well, confirmed that, oh, yeah, he's not a bad kid, and that he has, like, ADHD and never finished the 10th grade.
Oh, wow.
That's
not a character witness. That is a
no. It was so. I felt so bad for this guy, like, not having, a competent defense.
Well, the other half of it, though, is that there was almost no defense.
I understand that as well. Like, he can only work with what he's given.
Yeah.
But even in working it, like I said, he just didn't seem very well prepared. He wasn't poorly spoken, but there were a lot of ums and pauses, and whenever there's an extended pause, the lawyer, both prosecutor and the defense attorney would be like, like, court's indulgence, Your Honor. It's like saying, please just give me a minute to, either look something up. He was doing that a lot.
Yeah.
Like, just grasping at straws, and, it just didn't. Again, he just didn't have much to work with.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was fucking interesting. I'll tell you that. I'd be really interested to find out what happens with Carson and her murder charge.
Yeah. Well, it seems like that's just sort of what's going to happen at that point. Because, like, man, that is. There's not really anything that either side could do to really prove that that person was there at that time and committed that actual act.
Well, committed the act, no.
Yeah.
But we
You
could
can.
put him there because
Yeah,
they also had
the handprint, they had.
well, that, and they had cell phone tower data showing which towers he was pinging off of
Yeah.
at the time of the call and the time of the murder, basically. And they said like, yeah, you can't pinpoint someone's location from the tower they're at, and if a tower is overloaded, you'll be pinging off of a different tower. But 99% of the time, you're going to be connected to whatever tower you're closest to. And the two towers he was connected to were right there. Like, one was like maybe 150 yards from the scene.
Huh. So, yeah, no question, kind of.
Yeah. And I mean, some of the other jurors were fucking morons.
Yeah.
Like, there was one lady. It was like, she was like a crazy cat lady.
Yeah.
But younger, the big ASPCA and PETA stickers on her canvas tote bag. And she was just saying stupid shit. She was like, well, I'm not sure Carson was ever even in the car with Miles. We don't have her handprint. I was like, how the fuck did she know about the phone calls then? She knew it to the exact time.
How was she there? How was she there when the 911 responder got
Yeah. She's like, oh, okay, yeah, I guess you're right. And I mean, I say kid, he was like 23, maybe. He was having kind of a hard time dealing with it because it hit pretty hard. Like, this is fucking two people's lives basically.
Yeah. That
we're dealing with here. And he kept getting hung up on, like, oh, well, it's why do you still have money in his pocket? Like, I don't get it. If you're robbing somebody, it's like, well, if shit goes wrong and you end up killing somebody, you're not going to stick around and rifle through his pockets.
Right. Yeah.
And
that was what I was thinking.
And number two, if he's a dealer, he's probably got his wad of cash and the money in his wallet.
Yeah, the bankroll. Yep.
Yeah, you might keep them separate. It's like, well, then why was there still, drugs at the scene? It's like, again, dude, you're not gonna. And some of the other jurors were really assholes to him. Like, one of them was like, oh, well, you'll understand when you're older. I was like, well, dude, don't fucking marginalize him because he's younger. Like, you don't know what he's been through.
Yeah, sorry. Arnold is currently asking. He just realized that we're waiting for him for like 2 seconds. And I'm like, yeah, Three Toes is telling his murder story.
Catch it on YouTube.
Catch it on YouTube.
Sorry, dude.
What'd he send me? This better not be the video I have. Ted Cruz family outtakes. Sorry. Yeah, jeez. But I think that's like a lot of juries are going to end up like that because you'll have the people who are older just like talking down to the younger people who have the exact same influence on the outcome of this person's life as them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and at that point, like, we had been in deliberation for about 3 hours, which was about an hour and a half longer than it should have been. Because, you do want to go, you get all of the evidence at your disposal there in the deliberation room, like, right. Again. Because when they were playing the prison phone calls, like, the overhead speaker system was malfunctioning, so it was only coming through the laptop speaker.
Oh.
And we had already been in and out of the courtroom a lot because they call it matters of law that the judge has to discuss with the lawyers that we can't hear because we have to remain impartial, like whatever, like what can be admitted, what can't, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I think that day we had spent like 2.5, 3 hours stuck in the deliberation room because they were trying to sort shit out. So he actually said in his closing argument, he was like, I did not ask for a recess to fix that problem because I could tell that you guys were frustrated, and I knew like you get those in your deliberation room. You can hook them up to the laptop in there and hear them much more clearly, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So, like, we did have to sit there and, it was worth it to go through all of the evidence again just to make sure. But some of them were thinking, like, way too hard on it. And it was a lot more simple than they were making it out to be.
Hold on, we're gonna get Arnold in here.
Oh God, I'm not telling this shit again.
No, you're not. Correct. It's almost time to go. All right. Arnold's gonna get in. We're gonna sync up. Okay, and we're back. Three Toes has basically told the entire murder story.
You just missed an entire Law and Order episode. I'll tell you that much.
It's pretty great.
Oh man,
the criminal was really dumb, and his lawyer was really bad.
Oh, imagine
his
that.
lawyer was god awful.
I compared him to Lionel Hutz. Three Toes had better quotes than me. For once, someone out Simpson quoted me because I couldn't remember the best Lionel Hutz lines. It's a monkey that smokes. Yeah. Three Toes, you basically got to sit in and like decide on the course of someone else's life.
Yeah, or at least the vast majority of it,
based on a crime that you have cause to believe they committed.
Yep.
But the physical evidence of which is limited in scope.
And I'm not trying to be like melodramatic or anything, but it kind of fucking hit me a little bit. Like a few days later, like it got very, very real.
Yeah, it's one of those weird things because I read a lot of like, you ever read Skip Hollandsworth stuff in Texas Monthly, where he's a writer. He wrote Bernie, the story behind it, anyways.
Mm-mm.
The movie that Jack Black was in. Okay, but he writes a lot of true crime stuff, and like there's a few that are just like, this woman took in a kid who had this eating problem, and the kid ended up eating like way too much salt because he didn't get exactly what he wanted, so he just took whatever he could reach, which was like a thing of salt, and just swallowed all of it. And the woman got put on trial for murder and child abuse. And it's like, holy shit, I could have 12 morons judging me at some point for something I didn't do.
Oh yeah.
Like, it scares the hell out of me daily.
The whole jury of your peers thing always kind of rang hollow, because what if your peers are fucking idiots that can't be objective?
I really like the Monarch's rant about the jury of his peers, and he's just listing people that should be there if it's his peers. I just thought that was in Venture Brothers. Fuck you guys. Anyways,
sorry, when you went to the Monarch, I'm like, a real king said that? I'm like,
yeah.
Oh, that makes sense.
Sure. But yeah, so how'd you feel after, like you said, it hit you a couple days later, but like, when you're hearing the verdict read, the verdict that you had a hand in, does that, like, do you feel like this is over? I can go on with my day, or is it one of those things that you kind of think back to even now, where you're just like,
oh no, I still think back to it, because it's another fucking person, dude. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's, at the end of the day, he broke the law and at least had a hand in taking someone else's life. But it's like, I don't know, it was kind of rough. Like, I definitely didn't make eye contact with the guy when they were reading the verdict. And the judge even told us, she was like, they did sentencing pretty much immediately following.
Yeah.
So, and she told us, like, if you all would like to, witness the sentencing, just let the bailiff know. They'll bring you back in when we're ready. We're going to take a short recess, blah, blah, blah. And, like, as soon as we got back to the room, none of us were like, we were all like, I'm not sticking around for sentencing. Like, I don't want to see that. Like, yeah. I don't want to witness that at all. And probably the one thing I'll never forget about it was, as soon as she said that he was found guilty of murder, the deputies sitting behind him have him stand up and immediately put handcuffs on him.
Wow. Harsh.
Because of the whole, innocent until proven guilty. As soon as he's proven guilty, he's placing handcuffs right there in the courtroom.
Oof.
And like, just hearing him fucking click like behind his back was just like, it kind of gave me chills. Like, it was creepy.
Yeah, I always think that's one of those things that we don't talk about, because when you talk about like murder trial juries, you think of the O.J. Simpson people who were, as soon as the thing was over, they're putting books out,
deal.
And they're having these conversations with the media, and they're coming on Good Morning America and everything like that. But like, man, you have to remember, it's just normal people who are being asked to come in and say yes or no, this person committed a crime of some nature and should be punished justly, or even unjustly.
Yeah, and
does the court offer any sort of counseling on this sort of thing, or is it just like, here's your $10 for the day? No, he's literally
yeah, Arnold. It was $10 a day and 57 cents a mile.
No. I was laughing at the idea of counseling being offered by someone
Well,
in America.
not that. She said, clearly you're under no obligation to talk to anyone about your experiences. She said you may get contacted by the media, you may get contacted by both the solicitor's office, which is prosecutor, or the defense attorney, because they like to talk to jurors about their experience, because that helps them, be better attorneys, like figuring out how jurors think. So you may get contacted, requesting, they ask you some questions about stuff. You're under no obligation to speak to them. And also said that if at any point you feel unsafe, contact the solicitors or the clerk of court's office. Because this is someone who apparently committed murder. Like, you don't know what, and even in this one, talking about the prison phone calls about keeping people quiet.
Yeah,
like. You don't know, and some of the other jurors were very nervous about what would happen after the trial.
Right. Well,
they felt like that they might have to look over their shoulders for a while.
Yeah.
And I won't lie, like it even crossed my mind a few times. I mean, they never said our names or anything, but I mean, this guy was looking at our faces the entire time.
Mm-hmm. And I think it'll be, unless you're in the paper with your actual name, it'll be pretty hard for them to figure out who you are.
Right.
Like, they'd have to communicate exactly, like, get my friend who's a caricature artist. He's going to explain. Prison phone call. And I have to imagine his calls are going to be monitored more closely, considering that when he was in jail, it was, like, they were checking those things and got evidence off of... Excuse me. They got evidence off of that whole thing based on what he was saying in jail, so they have to know that if he's going to try something, he'll be dumb enough to try it through the phones again.
Maybe, but being someone who watches a lot of MSNBC lockup, I know how short-staffed and short-resourced prisons are in this country. So I wouldn't bank on that, but... it's not like I'm worried or anything, but it definitely runs through your mind.
Yeah.
Because you're like, oh shit, yeah, I just put someone away for 38 years, essentially.
Yeah, essentially 40 years of their lives are going to be behind bars.
Well, I mean, better than the not having a life the other dude has.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, Arnold, so I guess you missed this part, but Three Toes was saying that the judge had instructed them that in South Carolina the law is the hand of one is the hand of all, I believe was the terminology used.
Yeah.
So because this guy had at the very least lured the victim into the area he was in and like guided him there to be in this place where he was shot, and had other conversations about certain things and other encounters with other people, that it was pretty clear by that he had at least conspired to have this person killed.
Basically facilitated it.
Yeah.
Is kind of the way I thought of it. Yeah. So he's so Arnold, Cliff Notes, 2 charges, murder and possession of a firearm and commission of a violent crime. We can never put the gun in his hand. So we have him guilty of murder because he essentially facilitated it, but not guilty of possession of a firearm and commission of a violent crime.
Oh, well, I mean, I bet weird. That makes him feel better.
Well, the lawyer, what was your thing about the lawyer? When he heard the decisions on those 2
charges?
Yeah,
he kind of like he kind of like when you like talk to a dog and they kind of cock their head to the side. He kind of, when the judge read not guilty of the firearm verdict, he kind of did that, and then kind of like shrugged his shoulders a little bit and was like, kind of, oh yeah, I guess I could see that.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, because I mean, they never even tried to put the gun in his hand.
Yeah,
They showed that he owned a gun that could have fired that kind of bullet at some point because he had pictures of it in his phone. But a gun was never found. No gun was ever found. And again, I would seriously recommend you listen to this episode because I think it's pretty interesting.
It is.
But yeah, the bullet was so deformed that they couldn't even do ballistics on it if they did have a gun.
Oh wow.
It was a lead cast bullet, unjacketed. Lead's really soft. As soon as it hit, it deformed so much.
What kind of bullet was it?
It was a nominal 38. So they said it could have been 9mm, 38 special, 357 Magnum, 38 auto or 380 auto. But by the weight of it, it was 140 grain, or they recovered 140 grain. So it was most likely a 38 or a 357, especially because it was lead cast, unjacketed. You don't put that in a 9mm semi-automatic, so it was like, well, yeah, it was probably a revolver because they never found shell casings either. So
did they find both bullets that were fired, or just the one?
No, he only got struck once.
So the first one might have missed.
Yeah, they have no idea which one hit. No idea from what angle he was shot at, because they said that once it's inside the body, yeah, you can track the path of the bullet, but from the outside, there's no way of determining what angle it came from. Like, all the shit you see on TV is fake.
I did want to ask that, is you said it was a little CSI-y at times, but like a lot of people, when they go into juries because of shows like CSI and NCIS and all these other shows that make it seem like the cops have this miracle technology, the enhanced stuff, right? That it kind of shapes the discussion that juries expect, because a lot of the time they don't have that sort of evidence. They don't have like a fiber from underneath the car suggests that the short-haired cat that was owned by this person was, blah blah blah, in it 6 months ago or something like that, right? But you're saying that there was the single grain of the
gunshot residue.
Yeah, gunshot residue particle that was on Carson's hand.
Yeah,
that was it. And then the angle of the bullet is undetermined, or the stance of the shooter is undetermined based on the bullet.
Right.
So, like, was that it for forensics, or they just kind of say, listen, there's not going to be a lot because of the handprint too. They just say, hey, this isn't going to be a lot of forensics because of the time of the year, the location, and the status of like how quickly this happened and everything. Or
well, I mean, it was and it wasn't. I mean, you've clearly got all kinds of science behind it, but it's not always enough to paint a clear picture. Like, yeah, she said we can't determine, the angle at which he was shot, but, she could tell us because there was no burn marks or spalling on the clothing that it was from a distance greater than 3 feet. Again, she was like, past 3 feet, we don't know how far away it was, but because we didn't see any of those burn marks or spalling from, unspent powder, like residue on the clothing, that typically only happens within 3 feet of a shooting. And, again, the cell phone stuff, that was definitely like CSI. The fact that they can basically recover anything deleted off of a phone unless it's completely destroyed.
Yeah.
The cell phone tower tracking. Yeah, even the fingerprint stuff, matching it up. But yeah, it was CSI, but not quite to the point to where it's sitting at a computer, enhance.
Yeah.
Like no, it's not quite that level.
It's kind of amazing that we're at that point now that we understand that like the CSI stuff doesn't happen and it's just entertainment,
right?
Like, because I remember reading a book on forensics just a few years ago where juries were like throwing out not guilty verdicts because they didn't get enough CSI stuff. But you guys seem to have realized that probably wasn't the case. I mean, it does seem like after you pull up the fact that the guy had no alibis, there were no defense witnesses that were really doing anything but giving character witness. statements, and the fact that he said he was short $180, he was gonna find it, is
that he was going to rob someone.
Yeah, he basically said he was going to rob somebody. So it seems like a robbery gone wrong.
Yeah. And that he's the last contact that the victim had, minutes before he got shot, via cell phone data.
And also was the guy who directed him to the place where he got shot.
Yeah, turn by turn directions.
As terrible as it sounds like you really made the right, you guys on the jury made the right call in putting him away. And I know that, we're talking about a person who, in all likelihood, committed a murder, or was at least at the very least had facilitated a murder. But it's still one of those things. You just put somebody away for 40 years.
Yeah.
And I don't want to make you feel bad about that, because, that was the task you were charged with, was, did this person commit this murder? And from the sound of it, yes, is the answer.
He at least facilitated it, and that's just as culpable.
Yes. In the eyes of the law. So.
Yeah. And, God, what was I going to say? Another kind of misdirection that the defense played was kind of the typical, not really race baiting, but the whole he gets hassled by police all the time. They funneled this direction into him. They never even bothered to explore other leads. And yeah, at the time, all of us are like, "Oh, shut the fuck up! That's bullshit." Yeah, I'm sure he'd been hassled by police before, but and none of us knew what kind of history he had, because they told us, don't go home and do any research on him or the case, blah blah blah. I'm sure some of the other jurors did, because they were fucking idiots. Yeah. And even when she instructed us, when we'd go on breaks, be like, do not discuss the case with each other. Once you start to form an opinion about something, it's really hard to overcome that opinion. Mm-hmm. Which I get. As soon as we get back in that fucking room, that crazy cat lady was like, so what do you think they meant by blah blah blah, or what do you think they meant, why'd they ask that question? Stop fucking talking about the case. Mm-hmm. She just said to stop talking about the case.
Yeah.
But then, so after when they broke the story in the local news about the sentencing and the verdict and everything, the South Carolina solicitor for Charleston County in this circuit court said that the solicitor's office and Charleston police are very familiar with Mr. Hayward. We're glad to finally have him behind bars.
Wow.
So in the back of my mind, I'm like, that's fucking harsh, and kind of lends credence to this guy saying that they were out to get him.
Yeah, I think that doesn't help anything if he's a known quantity in the neighborhood and with the police. But man, yeah, but honestly, that the argument only holds water if all the evidence of this was circumstantial, right? But they have him with no alibi. They have him talking to the victim. They have him talking to somebody about burning the shirt he was wearing that night, about shutting people up who might talk about it. Unless he's in jail handling things from another crime he committed that the cop should have charged him with. What? Yeah. Ugh.
Yeah, I mean, it was circumstantial, and that was difficult, but it's like I said with the lawyer, we only had so much to work with.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Arnold, how do you feel?
I'm feeling pretty all right. I mean, things are all right. It was interesting to listen to, definitely.
Yeah.
What did you think of your fellow jurors in general? Did you think they were qualified to be there, or?
Some of them yes, some of them no. Like I said, the one lady was a fucking moron. Mm-hmm. Most of them definitely didn't want to be there.
Well, I mean, that's fair enough.
Yeah. And it's like I mentioned earlier. One of them was really young. He was 23. He took it kind of hard at the end when we got to deliberation. I think it kind of hit him as very real. And, he just had a lot of questions. He kind of bought into the misdirection a little bit. So I tried my best to be pretty, logical with him and explain things and my point of view and try and reason with him and, make it a little easier. But some of the other jurors are just fucking assholes to him. They're like, oh, well, you'll understand when you're older. It's like, don't fucking marginalize him because he's young. You don't know what he's been through.
Yeah.
And, most of them were just, just normal people. There really only 2 or 3 that were fucking idiots. So
out of 12, right?
14 because you have 2 alternates.
Yep.
It fucking sucks for the alternates because they have to sit there through everything, but don't get to cast a vote unless extenuating circumstances happen.
Right. Yeah.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a fun little thing. If one of the jurors can no longer do their duties or have compromised themselves, then the alternate steps in.
Yeah.
But from what I understand, it's kind of rare unless trials drag on for.
We
extended
did
periods.
have one lady that had to go to the hospital because she was having some kind of nerve issue in her leg that was causing her excruciating pain. She couldn't walk. She was back the next day though, but it does happen.
Free entertainment.
Yeah.
Well, actually, you're paying most of your money to it, but $10 a day. No wonder
$10 a day, really?
And 57 cents a mile.
I forgot about that.
I ended up with $163 and some change.
Man, how much
Here
did
you
you
go.
lose by not working?
That's
4
see,
hours
of work.
that's the thing.
Congratulations.
I'm salary, and my boss is really understanding about me working from home and wherever I want to, and doing work in odd hours. So basically, I got comp time.
Oh,
So
neat.
yeah, I didn't lose any money for this.
That's
wow. So what does somebody do that has a traditional 40-hour-a-week job or something?
They fucking deal with it.
Yep.
That's
Holy
all.
shit.
That's it, man. I think in this state, your employer's required to pay you for 2 days of jury duty, and they
2
can't
days.
fire you. They can't fire you regardless. You cannot be fired because you serve on a jury, but they can definitely not pay you after those 2 days.
Yeah.
So
My state will actually pay out on that. My state pays out full time.
now, from what I understand, if you sit on a federal case, they will match your wage at least to a certain extent.
Yeah, I think it's usually to 40,000 or something like that a year.
Man, hope you don't have any real expenses.
Yeah.
Holy shit, that's fucking terrible.
And so why do you think everyone tries to get out of jury duty besides being in a horribly depressing situation for a week? Jesus
And real quick, you mentioning the whole people having expectations from CSI and TV and whatnot. Yeah. The judge, she had this axe to grind against Judge Judy and Judge Joe Brown and all those fucking daytime court shows. She brought it up a few times. Talking about I hope this has been an educational experience for you, that it's not like those shows, and that those people aren't even real judges, they're just mediators, and anyone can do that. So she's had this fucking agenda, thought that we were all thought this was gonna be fucking Judge Judy.
My parents would have thought that. That's their, besides my brothers getting arrested, that's their entire experience with the law. My brothers once got arrested for traffic violation in back-to-back days and had court dates that were literally an hour apart. So
Oh, Jesus.
My parents are familiar with the court, if you will.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. So, Three Toes, any final thoughts on all this? Because I know we're kind of pressed on time.
Just for a little bit of education, feel like I'm giving back a little bit. Here's probably the best strategies to get out of jury duty. Mm-hmm. Should you ever find yourself sitting on the panel for selection?
Hey, hold on. Why should I listen to you?
Well, no. So because it's in hindsight.
Okay.
So, and I should have remembered one of them from my mom, because she's been able to get out of jury duty several times. If you're a member of any kind of anti-drunk driving association, like MAD or FAT or whatever the other Mothers Against Drunk Driving and all the other iterations of it.
Yeah.
And I've even had my attorney friends confirm this. They will never seat you if you say, and they'll ask if you're a member of any of those organizations. They will never seat you because drugs or alcohol almost always play a factor in criminal cases. So they'll see that as a bias. NRA membership, that's another big one. You'll typically get excused.
Because you may shit up the courtroom.
Possibly.
Funny thing, my boss actually bought me an NRA membership just to piss me off. You can be signed up for it. You can be signed up for it by someone else.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Nice. One of the more interesting ones was, she asked all these preliminary questions. One of them was, if you have any sort of moral, religious, or philosophical objection to sitting in judgment of a fellow human being.
Ooh,
I thought that was a pretty good one, because how can you disprove that?
Yeah.
It's kind of like the whole conscientious objector.
Yeah. I think that's not a bad one as far as that goes, because damn, you're not supposed to do that.
Yeah. But don't try and say like, oh, I've got a trip coming up, or oh, I can't, like, I've got this and this going on this week, because then they'll just transfer you to another date, and you can only transfer once.
Ooh.
Yeah, so you'll be screwed the next time.
I just always forget to show up, and I'm good. Thanks, Florida.
This judge had no problem saying that she would issue bench warrants for people who didn't show up.
Wow.
So
wonderful. So, what'd you learn about the American justice system and all this, Three Toes?
God, I was actually sick of justice by the end of the third day.
Okay.
I am the law.
That's it. We should just have Judge Dredd come
God,
through.
no shit, yeah. I'm fully in favor of adopting either the Punisher or Judge Dredd type of judicial system.
Punisher just going through neighborhoods, laying down the law. Oh, God.
Someone in a 5-mile radius killed somebody. You're all guilty.
I don't know which one of you is guilty, so I'll just kill all of you.
Problem solved.
Yeah, it makes it easier. You probably got the right person at some point in that rampage.
At some point.
Yeah. So, Three Toes Fallout 4 is pretty good.
Yeah, I've been watching a Let's Play of it.
Yeah. I got to Diamond City. The rich people there are the upper deckers. It's a thing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I thought that was funny. Anyways, we should, unless anyone else has anything they want to mention, we should head out.
Nope.
No, that's enough Law and Order for
I was
this week.
Say, we're
maybe one day again we'll talk about video games.
Sure.
Justice never changes.
Next week, Three Toes goes on a vigilante rampage.
Next week, I'm on trial for murder.
Yeah.
Good turnaround.
Rip.
All right. Well, thanks, guys.
Roll Tide.
Well,
Forward
no,
ready.
you don't want the Tide to roll.
What? Why not?
Because Clemson's playing Alabama, probably.
Oh.
Yeah.
If we can beat Oklahoma in the first playoff, yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah. All right. Well,
I'm ready. So on and so forth.
unroll Tide.
Go fuck yourself.
Go fuck yourself.